So we mentioned, I feel like ages ago in one of the, oh yeah, by the way, we haven't been doing the monthly recap episode. And we mentioned in, I think the last one we did, which was August, that we're working on a pricing tool called Factor. I've also been talking about it a lot on my LinkedIn and sharing a lot of it on threads from the Factor account. And yeah, we wanted to make an episode about basically like what to factor into pricing, because that's what this tool is all about, is one, making it really easy to do that, but two, also a lot of educational content on like, why do you want to factor these things into your price? So yeah, let's talk about it. I feel like before we go into all of this stuff, I feel like there's a lot of awareness out there that everyone charges something different. And I think it creates this huge confusion around pricing. And recently I realized, like when I was creating the content for Factor and like going over the factors, I realized that it actually makes a lot of sense why there's such huge pricing discrepancies. And it's not even wrong. Like, I feel like a lot of people talk about pricing, like we should create a standard. And we've talked about this too, like create a standard. And that's kind of what we want to do with Factors, create a standard. But the thing is, that's actually completely impossible because of all of these factors that go into it. It's not like this product. It's not like an iPhone where there's, it has this fixed price and it's always going to be that price. Or like, phones always have this range of like being between 600 euros and like 1,200 euros. Like that's just like the range. But it's so difficult in our industry because there's so much that goes into a price. And that's just something that I realized recently, which I wanted to share.
Also, on top of that, the market value differs so much, even for the same output. And we don't have the same with products because, just as you mentioned right now, phones are all between a certain price range. Like no phone costs like 5K unless there's like some weird, I don't know, gold on it or whatever. But in our industry, it does.
Yeah.
Like one website, even the same exact website would cost you like the market value of that website differs so much that it takes an expert to actually put like a price label on it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people online who will see like the price of, like, let's say some big agency did like the rebranding of Vienna. And like there's a new font and there's the logo and there's like the folder material, and that's like kind of what everyone sees. And then you have these people online being like, this cost like 10 million. I could have done this for 1,000. Like, yeah, okay, but like, again, they don't understand these factors. Like they don't understand that that is a normal price and that huge price discrepancy is okay and is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's like, what are the factors like that we think are important in particular and that we included in our tool. Let's start with like the creator factors, which is kind of goes back to that one example with the like Vienna branding. One of the most important things is to understand that like a single freelancer cannot and shouldn't charge the same as a huge agency or a team. Like the most obvious reason is that the fixed costs of those two businesses are completely different. The output of those two businesses is going to be completely different. Like, yeah, there will be freelancers out there that can create the same output. I'm sure there are some out there, but most of them cannot create the same output as a team can.
Also not just output, but the same processes that a team can.
Yeah. And the thing is that the clients booking agencies, they want that agency process. They have a lot of people involved. They want those like meetings. They want those like multiple levels of people doing quality control. Like they want that. And they pay for that and they're fine with that. And they have that budget like ready to spend on that project. So there's the size of team that matters. And then one thing we built into the tool, which I think thought was really important, was the experience level of a solopreneur. So if you're a single person, like if you're an agency, it's a bit different because you already have like that established, you're an agency. But if you're a freelancer, it's important that people who have 10 years of experience are charging that value of having 10 years of experience. So someone who has 10 years of experience should be charging more than somebody who like just started out and has been doing it for a year. And so that's something that we built into the tool as well.
Yeah. I think that pretty much covers all the bases that we've had for the creator factors. Of course, there might be more, and in the future we might add more, but I think those are like the pillar of what's really needed to be factored into the project price.
Yeah, and it's something that you've already probably implemented yourself. I'm sure there's people out there who have noticed, okay, I've like gained more experience, I have more expertise, I'm faster at what I do, I understand the problems better, so I'm going to raise my price to reflect that. And Factor, the tool will just help you do that without having to really think about it. And then you've already probably seen that agencies charge more than you. And it's because they have a bigger team and they have more resources. So it makes sense. And I think that's a lot of this. There's these discussions about like, oh my God, our agency's priced like way too high and astronomical rates, and who spends that much on a website? It's like, it's okay and it's not wrong. And I think that's something that we will be doing with Factor too, is creating awareness for that.
The second category are commissioner factors, which is basically taking care of like the client side of things. So we factor in the client size, we factor in who the client is, where the client is from. Because, let's break it down a bit more. So for example, why is it important where the client is from? You shouldn't be charging the same prices for clients that live in the US versus clients that live in Bangladesh. Of course, they have like a completely different baseline of how much they would spend on a website.
Not only is the purchasing power important, but also the market value. Like, a website is going to generate more revenue in the USA than it will in Bangladesh, or than it would in Austria. Like, a lot of European countries don't want to spend a lot on marketing services either. So like UK is often very different to Austria. Like, there's a huge difference there. Or the north of Europe is often very different. Or Switzerland is another one. Mm-hmm. Like, that they value design, they value that work. So they're, one, going to be open to spending a lot. And two, they also know that it will like create a return. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Austria, unfortunately, not only do they not want to spend a lot on it, but it also usually doesn't generate a lot of return. So I understand their like reluctancy. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be reflected in your price. So if like for us, we're in Austria, most of our clients are in the US. So we charge US rates with them. And it's funny because we charge a little bit less than what the agencies in the US charge, and then we're considered super cheap for them. But for us, it's a lot of money.
Another line item, I would say, or another factor that we factor into the pricing in the commissioner factors is the company size. I mean, first of all, whether it's a company or like a person. By person, I mean like an influencer or like some kind of person that has a budget or like even a team behind them.
Yeah, and we also have startup.
You're right.
So we have, the reason why we differentiated these three is because there's a factor tied to each one that is slightly different depending on which one it is.
So like, as for example, the company factor, like one big thing that you can actually measure, like you can use to measure for pricing, is that how many people are employed there. I think that kind of makes it like, I would say, one of the easier commissioner factors, since it's kind of like what you can actually read out on the internet. Like you can find more info on it, and you can then kind of like, okay, I understand this is like a really big company, meaning they probably have a bigger budget and allocate it for that project.
Yeah, and the reason we included that factor is because we think it's important. And this is obviously completely up to the individual designer or freelancer if they want to take on that client or not. But it's important to remember that a small business cannot pay the same price as an enterprise company. So if we take like the cafe around the corner as an example, maybe they need branding from you. They can't pay a lot, and your price should obviously be representative of your value and what you want to make, but it should also be realistic for them. So that's why we have this client factor. And what it does is basically it wouldn't change your price very much for like a small business. It would be like your base price. But for like a huge company, like let's say some like multi-million-dollar company comes to you and needs branding, then the factor would be something like 20. And then your price would just go up by 20. Like 20 times.
As it should.
And at the end, you're going to get a price where you're going to be like, that's an insane amount. But trust me, that is one, what they are willing to spend, and two, what you should be charging from like for that company. Then the second one, which is also actually really easy to measure, is the influencer one. So in addition to company as a client type, we have influencer or artist. So like a single person who has influence, has like a following. This could be literally an influencer online, or it could be, I don't know, let's say David Beckham comes to you and he needs something. You know, like his brand is him, his personality. And then it would be like his following. How big is his following? And then the price, the factor would be dependent on that. So if it's like some tiny micro influencer that needs you to do like, I don't know, some assets for their social media, it wouldn't change your price very much. But if it's like some huge influencer that has like 1 million followers on Instagram, then it would change your price by a lot. And again, it's representative of what they should be paying you as somebody with that much influence, and also to the impact that's going to have. They're going to profit off of your work by a lot more than like a micro influencer would. And then we have the startup. The reason why the startup is different to the company is because we realize there are startups that don't have a lot of money. I think a lot of people misinterpret startups because they think startups are all like in that funding stage where they don't have money and they're doing everything like with their savings or whatever. But there are startups that have a lot of money because they've passed that stage and they actually have investors and they're ready to like go like beyond just their first product and they want to like really establish themselves. So that's why we have the startup, and then it's dependent on which funding stage they are in. And then your price would either like stay the same or go up if they're in like a higher funding stage.
And I think that startups often have it like out in the open in which stage they're in. So it's also pretty easy to kind of like get the idea in which stage they're in.
And if they don't have a public, that's something you should ask them. Like if it's a startup, be like, oh, okay, cool. So which funding stage are you in? So that you know, okay, what should I be pricing for that?
Another factor that we factor into the pricing are the industry factors. And they are mostly relevant for the company, meaning that what do we mean by industry? Like, for example, pharmaceutical industry or fashion industry. I'm not quite sure about the exact namings. We have like a whole list there. And all of them have like a different factor because not every industry has the same kind of, how do you call it? Like, has the same kind of like value for the work that you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sums it up basically. And therefore, they also like need different factors.
Yeah, so one good example of that is like agriculture. Agriculture is known for not valuing marketing, like creative work, very highly. So for them, it would be like your work would be like slightly cheaper than for another industry that values it.
Yeah, but it's like really needed.
Yeah, so it's like, I feel like the industry factors they're very small and they're very like nuanced. They don't make a huge impact, but it's just important to understand, like the reason why we included it is to understand that like a different client operating in a different market has a different budget for creative services and also values creative services differently, and that needs to be reflected in price.
And most of the time they probably also have like a lower impact on their business.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they don't budget a lot for it. Yeah, I think that covers all of the factors.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that we included in the whole like calculator, it basically what it does is it takes a base price for a deliverable, and then it applies these factors depending on what you've like inputted. And then you have like a quote. And then one thing we also included, one, to create transparency on your quote, and also so that also a little bit of educational work is things like a rush fee. So you can add a rush fee. Why should you add a rush fee? So basically, if a client wants you to do something ASAP, and you really have to like rework your schedule, you have to move a project, that's inconvenience for you. It makes you have to reschedule things. It means other timelines get shifted, which means you can't take any work on like earlier than like when those end. So it costs you money at the end of the day, and that's why you have to account for that. So the rush fee is you can put in how much you want, but I think it's like capped at 20% or something. I don't know.
I think 25.
25, yeah. I mean, industry standard, I think, is about like 20%. But you could also just do 5 if you want to be nice. And then the other thing we included, which is also like for you to be nice to your client, is a discount. So sometimes we give our clients discounts sometimes when it's like a loyalty thing. Like maybe they want to book 10 hours with us for a retainer, like a monthly one. And it's and we actually like raised our prices, but then it's like a client that has been with us for years. So then we're like, here's a discount. You still get like the old rate kind of thing. So like we have the option to offer a discount. And then we also have the payment provider fee. So a lot of people nowadays use like a payment provider to get money, like get the invoice paid by their client. And if you're using something like PayPal or whatever it is, there's always a fee involved. And you shouldn't be paying that out of your own money. So we have included that as well. And basically what the tool should do is give you a quote at the end that has like the line items that your client can see. The factors are invisible, like on the quote. But the line items are there so the client knows, okay, this extra thing is because of the payment processing fee. This extra thing is because of the rush fee. This extra thing is a discount. And then you have the deliverables as line items too.
I mean, I think it goes for both perspectives, like one for the client perspective that you just mentioned, and the second for your own perspective.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just like forget about all of these fees and don't even factor them in.
Yeah.
And this tool just kind of like helps you guide you through the proposal process so you really don't forget anything.
Yeah.
So it kind of like just helps you. And what you mentioned in the beginning, it's really difficult to get like a standardized pricing tool or like a measure that applies to everyone. But I think it's really important that at least what this tool does is to educate you, first of all, and second of all, show you the prices that are realistic in this industry. And because I think that a lot of people are not aware what they can actually charge.
Yeah.
And they forget a bunch of those factors, like the client factor. They mostly just like think about themselves and see, okay, this is my, I think most of you are probably aware of the creator factors that we mentioned in the beginning. And you also said that a lot of people are already applying them, saying like, okay, I have so much experience now, so I can kind of raise my prices. But I don't think that a lot of them actually consider the client side of things and the value for the client. And it's extremely difficult to measure value and to apply value. It's abstract. And with those factors, of course, it's not a perfect system. However, it's a system that is applicable and not just abstract, because when we talk about value-based pricing, it's often extremely abstract and often in a perspective of how much the client values it. And that creates a little bit of an issue for beginners, especially because how would you know what it's worth it for them? And how do you even ask these questions for, okay, how much money do you think you will make with this project? I mean, this is a super difficult question to ask and not super accessible. I think that a lot of tools or a lot of phrases that should help you with value-based pricing are not accessible unless, for most people, I would say. And this tool makes value-based pricing accessible. I think that's kind of like the main mission.
Yeah, it really does, because at the end of the day, when you apply a times 20 factor to a base price for the enterprise company and you get a quote out that's like 60,000 for a website, that's like a completely normal amount that you should be charging for that type of client. And that is the same amount you would get out of like talking to the client in these ways you hear online a lot, like how much revenue are you expecting from this, or like you talk to them and guide them towards understanding how much it's worth. But the thing is, the clients who are paying that amount, they already know it's worth that much and they already have that amount ready. So when you quote that much, they're not going to be surprised. And that's what this tool is doing, is it's taking away that like confusion around value-based pricing, and it's just giving you like a black and white, this is how much that is worth for this client, and that's how much you should be charging.
Yeah, that gives you like a good baseline.
Yeah, and I think that like it's gonna need a lot of testing. Like I feel like we're at a good place and we're gonna test it before it's released. But it's going to be really interesting to get like feedback from people, what they think. I think a lot of people are going to be shocked by some of the prices. They're going to be like, there's no way that should be this much.
I think we often have this because a few times people have come to us asking, okay, what should I charge for this? And we then ask all these questions, like, who is the client, la, 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 because we factor in all of these things. And then we tell them like kind of like a, I don't know, like a price range we think is like realistic. And more often than not, people are extremely shocked. They're like, no, they're never going to pay this. I'm like, yeah, okay. But they're kind of like, this is the value of it.
Yeah. And we know it is like, we have experience charging those rates. And the funny thing is, like, we took one of the projects that we had recently quoted and recently finished, and we tested it with like a 20 factor. And we got the exact amount, like almost exact to the decimal, like amount that we charged for that project.
That was crazy though.
Yeah, that was crazy. And it made us realize that this tool is actually really realistic. Like, even though like 100,000, whatever, it would shock a lot of people, that's the actual price that we charged and that we got from this client. And it's not unrealistic. And it's not, there are agencies out there charging 500,000 for the work that we did. Why? Because their factor for them would be higher. Their agency is bigger. They have more employees. Like, if we factored that into our price, we probably would get to that 500,000.
Yeah, that's what makes this tool so great.
Yeah.
Because it really just takes your scenario, like it's specifically tailored to your scenario, or like it's specifically tailored to you. Yeah, thank you, to your context. And which is like so difficult to understand, where especially when you just started out, or even a lot of people that have been in the industry for years still have difficulties with it. Like, we ran a survey, I forgot the numbers, maybe.
I know them.
You know them?
Used it for content so many times. 65%, 65% were experienced, had more than 4 years of experience in the industry, but only like 32% said they felt confident about pricing.
And this number is crazy.
Yeah. Most of them were like in the middle, like feeling okay. But like after 4 years, you should be feeling more than okay about your prices.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if 60% are 4+ years of experience, then 60% should also feel confident. But that wasn't the case.
Or like more like towards being confident than in the middle versus or like going into the other direction.
We had confident and very confident.
Exactly.
And in confident and very confident, we're only 32%.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it should be leaning towards that direction. That's also what you said in the beginning. It's a bit of it's like ambiguous, because there is no real market value of things, because they're like, a market value of a website can be as little as 100 euros, or it can be as much as 1 million, 2 million, multiple millions. Like, the range is just too big, and it's like not very transparent. And on top of that, like kind of like finding your own value, it's extremely difficult. But anyways.
And also finding your comfort zone. I think like a lot of people have a comfort zone of undercharging, and they are scared to charge more. And I think that tools like Factor and also the educational content that we're creating, in addition to it, should make people feel more confident about charging what they should be charging for their work.
That's actually such a good point, because I think even if you think that maybe you could charge like 60K for a website because you know it could be worth it, if there is nothing to back you up on that, I think it's super difficult to ask for it actually.
Yeah, and I think that if a tool like this like really becomes established as like something to use, and people go on there and they put in their project, and then they see like, oh, I could charge 20K for this, that they'll actually feel like, oh, okay, like maybe you already have a gut feeling like this should be a lot because this is a huge company. And then you check it and you're like, okay, wait, I'm like actually in the right range.
Yeah, or even if you don't feel comfortable yet charging that, at least you know what it should approximately be.
Yeah, and you can work towards that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can be like, okay, this could be maybe my goal. Maybe I go below it because I'm not confident enough yet. But as soon as you start charging more, you will end up charging even more until you probably reach that point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so if you're interested in the tool, I'm not sure when this episode is going to come out, but probably still before like we launch the first MVP. We're currently working on launching like the first iteration of this product that should go online and people should test it, and we're going to get feedback, and then we're probably going to have updates and stuff. But if you're interested in getting like early access, then definitely sign up to the newsletter, which I will link in the description, and follow us on social media. I'll link those as well. We're really super active on like keeping everyone up to date on where we're at. So it's definitely worth it to sign up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Never Went to Business School. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify. And if you enjoy our content, check out our YouTube channel for more educational videos and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack.